Thinking that God is immoral is not a good enough reason for not believing in his existence. This is basically coming off of one comment I have. More often than not, when talking to skeptics, this same situation arises. I usually ask, if God came down Bruce Almighty style with the angels and said the Bible is my book, Jesus is my son, the whole 9 yards, will you follow him? And the majority of the time, the answer is no, claiming that he is immoral. And every time I hear that response, it's probably the most confusing statement I've ever heard in my life. Because the majority of the time, when I present another question somewhere in the conversation of whether morality is objective or not, most of the time I get the answer that morality is subjective or somewhere along the lines of that. And when putting these two together, the person I'm talking to will state that God isn't real because he's immoral, which I would say it doesn't make sense one bit. But then again, these are the conversations I'm a part of. I don't speak from my personal view on this, and I'm not saying it's the norm for every skeptic. Some may claim that this is a false dichotomy, claiming that they don't believe in a God because there's no evidence for his existence. And I'm going to sit here and say that that's a good mindset to have. I mean, I don't believe in a God because I don't have evidence. But, I mean, yeah, but I do have some evidence. I'm one of those individuals that will look into a computer and claim that someone made that, even though I never seen the creator, and compare that with the human body, let alone a cell which, from my knowledge, scientists have never been able to replicate from scratch, and say that someone had to create this body, this cell, whatever. I have very specific prayers answered. And yes, you can call it as a personal experience, but how many times does a prayer need to be answered, compared to the ones that haven't been answered, for me to say this is legit? And for me, I have this understanding that some things are just objectively right and some things are just objectively wrong. Like, where does that standard even come from? Evidence is always needed. Faith isn't belief without evidence. Faith, which according to the scriptures and what other people say, comes after evidence. I have no idea when people get to claim that faith is just blind belief. Blind belief doesn't help anyone. It's dangerous. But if I supply you with the evidence, but your thought process is to reject one certain outcome of that evidence, you're at least likely to believe that there is a God in the first place. For example, and let me be clear, I'm not saying that this only goes to skeptics, but everyone, even Christians, think the same way. And that probably leads to a whole different conversation on what faith is, and that is not limited to religious people. But again, back to the topic, if you believe God is immoral, that's not evidence to say that he's not real. Let's get some evidence, man, like, let's plus some evidence, I don't know. A majority of people who claim that the Bible holds authoritative scriptures will claim that the God mentioned in the Old Testament is the day one creator. Unless it's Gnosticism, because I think they believe that the God in the Old Testament is like an evil being. But at least from when I was looking at it, they understand that there's some type of creator or some type of divine out there. And if the day one creator, the Alpha and the Omega, beginning and end, does something, I think it's safe to assume that he knows what he's doing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy to accept or that doesn't lead to more questions or discussions. But again, when I'm saying that if you believe that God doesn't know what he's doing, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not real. If you don't believe that, it's your subjective opinion, by that logic, right? But what I'm saying that if you believe that God is immoral based on your subjective opinion, that shouldn't be a reason for saying that he's not real. People have their own opinions about the president, but no one's going to be like, the president is immoral, so he's not real. That doesn't make sense. Some people may claim that they don't think God's evil, they know God's evil. But again, according to who? If morality is subjective, that holds no weight to claim that God is immoral. But yeah, you and your peers might say that. But does your peers determine the moral standard? That's not an objective ground to stand on. My dog whines every time I go outside to fix my car. He whines thinking I'm probably going to leave him. He doesn't know anything about paying bills or going to work, and that I don't want him to run outside and chase a cat. I'm pretty sure he's thinking that I'm being unfair. He probably thinks I vanished, but that doesn't mean I actually vanish. I'm not asking you or trying to persuade you to be a believer in Christ, which is a good thing, you should do it. But if you tell me that I won't believe in your God because I believe that he's immoral based on your subjective opinion, that doesn't make sense. And I will ask you to check into your reasonings of understanding why you don't believe that there is a God. Oh, that's all I got. I'm done.